I'm Corbett Wall with USDA Market News, here with your weekly feeder and stocker cattle market summary for the week ending December the 6th, where we're going to go back 2 weeks for the week before Thanksgiving week. And this week, marketing got back underway fully after a lot of sale barns, and direct trade was real slow last week too during Thanksgiving week. But a lot of big markets selling at least 2 weeks worth of receipts this week, and we had a real active week of feeder cattle marketing. And your trends were pretty well split. In the southern plains and in the southeast, your feeder type calves weighing in the mid to upper sixes going right into the feedlots sold steady to $2 lower, and what true yearlings would be mixed in that too, which is just hardly any yearlings to speak of right now. But your lighter weight stocker calves sold $1 to $4 lower, and the full extent of that was seen in the southeast, where those order buyers buy those calves in those little southern markets there for shipping back west. But it was sure cheaper all around in that part of the country. Now when you get into the Midwest and the northern plains and going out west there in the upper parts in your mountain states, your markets were fully steady to $2 higher on feeding calves and stocker type calves. And I think more than anything, there's more attractive offerings up there. A lot of your best strings of calves are from producers, your better producers that hold them till this late in the year, and a lot of them will hold them all the way through January. And those cattle are just really something to see. You know, they've got a lot of hair on them, and they're just acclimated to the colder weather. They're ready to go, mostly long time weaned, and they're just really what buyers are looking for, no matter what they're going to do. And north of I-70, that's what you're seeing here and going to see in December and January, with the exception of the holiday weeks. But that ice storm in the southern plains and across the southeast there hampered demand quite a bit. The media talked about it all week and kept going on and on about how bad it is, and it is bad. People are going to be losing power when it's cold out, and that's rough. And just a few years ago they had kind of a bad ice storm through parts of that country, and it's fresh on their mind. But from East Texas going through most of Arkansas there, going across the Boot Hill of Missouri and into Kentucky and places, just a crippling type ice storm right there. And it was going to be tough for a lot of those shippers to get their trucks going where they was going to have to cross that ice storm at some point. And the guys that were ordering the calves knew that, and really just weren't crazy about getting any more of them in. So it hurt demand there. Now you go in the Midwest and the northern plains and out in your mountain states and up Dakotas, Montana, up in that country, you know, it's December and it gets cold about every year at this time, and they're used to it, and it's not a big deal to them. A lot of them had a foot of snow out there. It didn't scare them a bit. They just went right along with it. In Ogallala, Nebraska, temperatures were just hovering right over zero there. Air temperature 0 to 10 degrees. They had 5,800 head at the sale barn there, the Ogallala livestock market. Really a good sale. Lots of nice calves. Had a lot of fancy calves there. Some of the fancy steer calves that were called, and not because these cattle were non-hormoned or any Wagyu or any kind of bells and whistles like that. They're just really, really good calves, and most of them hard weaned, had a fair condition to them, and kind of calves you could just go anywhere with. Had a half a load of these steers, weighed 455, bring 255.50. Now that getting up towards $1,200 a head. Now we're not talking about a very big calf. The fancy 5-weight calves that they had quoted there, which they all sold good, but the really fancy ones sell from $2 up to $2.19, and even had a couple of loads of light 6 weights of the same kind. One of those bring 198, weighing just under 610 there. But those are some monster prices. A lot of these cattle are going to be stockers, and they're going to go south down to Kansas to some winter wheat pasture there, and you can cheapen cattle up pretty fast right there, and then the quality of those cattle, they'll go back to Nebraska to feed. But your feed costs are what's really continuing to push this record yearling market we've had all fall, and now these record calf prices that are coming in. But when guys know what their feed's going to cost, and they've gotten the availability of it is really good, they're not as scared to dive in on these calves. And you don't hear people worried about what the board's doing every day, and they haven't all fall here. These producers and these guys buying these cattle are not as scared as they have been the last few years, when that was the only prayer they had to come out, was to get those cattle hedged. They're not so worried about that now. Yeah, they're giving a big price for these cattle, but they know that they've got a cheaper way to put feed on them. They're selling their corn for under $4, so they know that it's going to be cheaper to put the weight on them. They've got plenty of hay. There's other sources of ways to put weight on these cattle, and they're just not as worried about it, and that's why their demand is so good for these cattle. At every level you're seeing this demand coming out. Your cow auctions, your slaughter cow auctions that normally just go on with 2 or 3 packer buyers and an auctioneer and a couple of guys working the ring, we're getting crowds in those right now. And these guys are picking around and picking through those cattle. Some of those cows, when they come in, they don't preg check them. If they see one that they think might be bred, and they can take it home. You know, these bred cows are bringing a lot of money. Pairs bringing a monster, and no telling what they could bring this spring. But you know, that's speculative demand, which is healthy for any market. But you know, and if you sit down in there and you buy a cow that happens to be bred that wasn't marked, you haven't tricked anybody or anything. You've earned that money. You took a risk and you've earned that money. If you can buy some of these cows that are cull cows to some people, but they're 5 years and back on age, and you think you can get them in better shape, and you think you can get them bred, hey, that's great. That's the way it works. So you're seeing a pretty good crowd of guys picking around in here, speculative buyers in these cow auctions, and that just goes to show you that these tight numbers of cattle has just trickled all the way down now. And you know, it's going to be at least 3 years before we see any significant change in those numbers. We could see a change in demand or feed or something like that, but our cattle numbers are tight. Fat cattle this week in the southern plains, they sold steady at 132. Up north, they sold later in the week 1 to 2 lower, dressed 208, 209. Your regional weighted averages this week in the north central states, a 6-weight steer cost you $179.12. That's for a 650-pound steer on the average, $179.12. Last week, $174.51. A year ago, $158.81. Down in the south central states, 5 to 6 weight steer cost you $182.34. Light receipts last week, $180.64. A year ago, $158.32. Down in the southeast, a 450-pound steer calf cost you $179.25, compared to $173.97 on just a few auctions last week, and last year $155.57. That wraps up your feeder stock or cattle market summary for this week. Check out our website for more market information, marketnews.usda.gov. From the Regional Market News Office in St. Joe, Missouri, we'll talk to you next week.